Welcome to the Rando Podcast. Chris Crimson here.
And Nyx joining you. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future discussions. We really appreciate all of your support.
And a big thanks to our amazing sponsors on YouTube. Chris, The Plant-Based, and Emma Advanced. Your support, it really keeps the conversation flowing.
It really does.
So you know how sometimes you stumble upon a fact or like an idea that just makes you rethink things you thought you knew?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Well, today we're diving into some corners of the vegan world that might surprise you. We've gathered some really interesting information about plant-based foods that, for various reasons, haven't quite become staples, even in vegan diets.
Right.
Think of this as an exploration of some hidden culinary potential and maybe a look at why these options aren't more mainstream.
Exactly. And what's fascinating right off the bat is how our cultures and, our histories shape what we even consider food in the first place.
Yeah.
We're going to explore things like cannabis leaves, but maybe not for the reasons you might immediately think.
Right.
Wild plants that many of us actively try to get rid of, and some powerfully fermented foods that might challenge your taste buds a little.
Definitely.
Our goal is really to understand these less conventional vegan choices, explore what they offer, and really dig into why they have this sort of untapped status.
Okay, let's kick things off with something that definitely gets people talking. Cannabis leaves. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, the information we have here focuses purely on the nutritional aspects of the non-psychoactive parts of the plant.
Yeah, that's important.
It turns out, historically and nutritionally, these leaves have quite a story to tell.
It's fascinating here, connecting it to the bigger picture of plant-based eating, is that cannabis leaves are a surprisingly complete source of protein. They contain all 9 of those essential amino acids.
All 9. Wow.
Yeah, those protein building blocks our bodies can't produce on their own. They're also packed with omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, plus a good range of vitamins, minerals, and those, beneficial antioxidants. Historically, different cultures even recognize these nutritional perks. So the key insight here is that we've kind of let cultural baggage blind us to a potentially valuable and complete plant protein source.
It really is eye-opening, isn't it? You hear cannabis and your mind immediately goes somewhere else.
Exactly.
So why the hesitation when it comes to the leaves as food? The information we looked at makes it pretty clear it's that strong association with the psychoactive compound.
Mm-hmm. That's the crux of it.
That perception really overshadows any potential nutritional benefits, even though the non-flowering parts of the plant have, distinctly different properties.
This raises a really important question about how our cultural associations can put blinders on us when it comes to food, right?
Totally.
The stigma and legal complexities around cannabis have created this huge blind spot, preventing many from even considering the potential of its leaves as a nutritious vegan option.
Yeah.
Plus, there just isn't a lot of information out there on how to actually cook with them.
Exactly. You can walk into most health food stores now and find hemp seeds and hemp oil. But a recipe specifically calling for fresh cannabis leaves, not so much.
You really don't see it.
All right, let's move on to something a bit more down to earth, literally. You're talking about those wild plants, the ones a lot of us spend our weekends trying to pull out of our gardens.
Ah, yes, the weeds. And here's where it gets really interesting, because many of these so-called weeds have a long and valuable history as food. Take stinging nettles, for instance.
Ooh, nettles.
Historically, they were a staple in medieval Europe and among various indigenous populations. People feared them for their sting, but cooking transforms them into this vitamin-rich food historically valued way before common greens like spinach were around.
Stinging nettles. My immediate reaction is, ouch. That sting is definitely a major deterrent. The information we have confirms that those tiny hairs are the culprits, releasing histamine and serotonin.
Precisely. That stinging sensation is the main reason for the modern aversion. However, the information also emphasizes that if you harvest them properly and, crucially, cook them,
Cooking's the key.
those compounds are completely neutralized. Blanching or any kind of cooking makes them perfectly safe to eat. Plus, nutritionally, they're powerhouses loaded with vitamins, minerals, those essential amino acids we just talked about, and beneficial polyphenols.
Polyphenols.
Yeah, these are plant compounds with antioxidant properties that can benefit our health.
So all that effort we put into avoiding them, and they can actually be really good for us. The information even mentions potential anti-inflammatory properties, benefits for kidney health, and even possible relief from hay fever.
It really makes you wonder what else we're overlooking in our backyards, doesn't it?
It really does.
Consider lamb's quarters, another plant that's often just dismissed as a weed. The information we looked at highlights that before spinach became widely available, lamb's quarters were a go-to green in many parts of the world.
A go-to green, wow.
It's a fascinating example of how our agricultural focus has narrowed our dietary horizons.
Wow, a staple. And now it's just something we yank out of the soil without a second thought. What caused that shift? Why did lamb's quarters, this nutritious staple of the past, become a disregarded weed? Was it solely about the rise of more easily cultivated crops and their availability in markets?
Largely, yes. It was its perception as a common weed and limited presence in mainstream markets. But nutritionally, it often outshines spinach, boasting higher levels of vitamins A and C, calcium, iron, and protein.
Better than spinach.
Often, yeah. It's a great example of how cultural narratives can obscure valuable food sources.
It really is. And then there are wild mushrooms. Now, this is one where the taboo comes with a very serious and valid reason.
Oh, absolutely.
The concern here is definitely rooted in a very real danger.
Absolutely. The information is very clear. The risk of toxicity and the potentially fatal consequences of misidentifying poisonous species is the primary reason for the deep-seated fear surrounding wild mushrooms. This isn't just an old wives' tale, it's a significant safety issue.
So foraging for wild mushrooms is definitely not something to take lightly. The information stresses the absolute necessity of expert identification and a deep understanding of different species.
Exactly. For safe consumption, you need to be absolutely certain of what you're picking. This has understandably led to a lot of cultural beliefs and superstitions around fungi.
Right.
However, certain wild mushrooms do offer unique nutritional benefits, like B vitamins, vitamin D, selenium, and compounds with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. But again, caution first.
It sounds like a high-stakes situation.
Yeah.
And finally, in the wild plant category, we have wild roots and tubers. These were essential for many early societies, according to what we've read.
They were absolutely vital for hunter-gatherer and early agricultural communities, yeah. Their underutilization today is largely due to the dominance of cultivated crops and, frankly, a decline in traditional foraging knowledge.
So people just don't know how anymore.
Pretty much. Knowing how to identify them correctly and the right ways to prepare them are also critical, as some can be toxic if handled improperly.
Right, another safety aspect. So it's a combination of lost knowledge and potential danger that has made these less common in our diets today.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about fermented foods that might be considered. Well, let's say they have a unique character.
Yes, the world of fermented vegan foods presents some truly distinct flavors and textures that could be a bit much for some people initially. Natto, for example, that traditional Japanese fermented soybean dish.
Ah, natto. The information we have mentions a really strong smell, a very particular flavor, and a notably slimy texture. That's quite the sensory experience.
It really is.
It's not surprising it's less common outside of Japan. Indeed. However, despite these sensory challenges, natto is incredibly nutritious. It's packed with protein, fiber, various vitamins, and beneficial probiotics. It's also a rich source of vitamin K2, which is important for bone health.
Vitamin K2, interesting.
So there's a real disconnect here between how some people perceive it and its actual nutritional value.
It really seems that way. Then we have miso, another Japanese staple, a fermented soybean paste. While its popularity is growing, it's still not as widely used in Western cooking, maybe.
Yeah, I think the information suggests that the strong umami flavor might be unfamiliar to some palates, and perhaps there's a limited understanding of how versatile it can be beyond just miso soup.
Right, people think soup and that's it.
But it also offers potential health benefits, particularly for gut health, thanks to those probiotics.
And lastly, in the fermented category, kimchi, the spicy Korean fermented vegetable dish. Its popularity has definitely surged globally.
Yes, it really has. But that spicy and pungent flavor, along with the smell from the fermentation process, can still be a barrier for some people.
Yeah, it can be intense.
The kimchi is a nutritional powerhouse, loaded with probiotics, vitamins, and antioxidants. Some research even suggests it might have positive effects on cholesterol and blood sugar levels.
It's fascinating how much our cultural norms and identities influence what we consider acceptable as food and what we tend to avoid. The information we looked at even touches on how veganism itself can be seen as a deviation from tradition in some cultures,
That's a really crucial point.
which can lead to its own set of social stigmas.
And this can certainly extend to specific vegan foods, especially those that are less familiar or have these strong sensory profiles. They might just not fit into what's culturally defined as food within certain communities, you know?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Socioeconomic factors can also play a role, with veganism sometimes being perceived, maybe unfairly, as a lifestyle more accessible to certain income levels.
Good point. So moving past these food taboos isn't just about educating people on nutritional benefits. It's also about understanding and being respectful of different cultural contexts. Now, we've talked a lot about why these foods might be less common or considered taboo, but the information we have also really highlights their impressive health benefits. Let's circle back and maybe emphasize those a bit more.
Absolutely. We've touched on the nutritional aspects as we went along, but it's worth reiterating. Cannabis leaves, beyond any cannabinoid content, are a rich source of essential vitamins and minerals, those important essential fatty acids, fiber, and protein.
That complete protein again.
Right. And the antioxidants they contain may also offer protection against chronic diseases.
And those stinging nettles, despite their initial prickliness, are packed with vitamins, minerals, and those beneficial polyphenols. The information we reviewed points to potential anti-inflammatory effects, diuretic properties, and even support for the immune system.
And lamb's quarters, that seemingly ordinary weed, often boasts a nutritional profile that surpasses cultivated spinach, with high levels of vitamins A and C, calcium, iron, and protein.
Higher than spinach? Incredible. And while wild mushrooms demand caution, certain varieties offer valuable B vitamins, vitamin D, selenium, and unique compounds with antioxidant and even potential anti-cancer properties.
Then we have the fermented foods. Natto, beyond its beneficial probiotics, is a standout for vitamin K2 and overall dietary health. Miso provides gut health benefits and may contribute to better blood sugar control and a reduced risk of certain diseases.
Right.
And kimchi is a true probiotic powerhouse, loaded with vitamins and antioxidants, potentially aiding in cholesterol and blood sugar regulation.
That's a pretty compelling list of potential health advantages. But with some of these, especially the wild plants and cannabis leaves, there are definitely important safety considerations we need to keep in mind. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Critical. When it comes to wild plants, the information we have cannot stress enough the importance of accurate identification.
Rule number 1. Rule number 1, 2, and 3. If you have any doubt whatsoever, do not eat it. Rely on multiple trusted sources, learn to recognize poisonous lookalikes, and consider learning from experienced foragers.
Good advice.
When trying a new wild food, start with very small portions and be aware of any potential allergic reactions. Also, practicing sustainable harvesting is crucial to protect these resources.
Yeah.
Don't just clear everything out.
Right, be responsible. And specifically for stinging nettles, always wear gloves when you're harvesting them and make sure you cook them thoroughly to neutralize that sting.
Essential.
Lamb's quarters should be washed really well, and it's best to avoid harvesting them from areas that might be contaminated, like roadsides.
Good point, yeah. And with wild mushrooms, well, as we said, expert identification is absolutely non-negotiable. There's no room for error there.
Zero room.
For wild roots and tubers, again, proper identification is key, along with thorough washing and often cooking to improve their digestibility and eliminate any potential toxins.
Okay. As for fermented foods, it's wise to start with small amounts to see how your body reacts, ensure proper fermentation if you're making them at home, and be mindful of their sodium content sometimes.
The salt.
Yeah. And when it comes to cannabis leaves, it's essential to focus on non-psychoactive consumption, obtain them from reliable sources, and start with small amounts. Consulting a healthcare professional is always a good idea, especially if you have any pre-existing health conditions.
So while these, perhaps less conventional vegan foods offer some really exciting possibilities for our diets, knowledge and caution are definitely our best tools here.
Absolutely.
It really makes you think about how our perceptions of food are shaped by our culture, by our history, sometimes by fear, and maybe sometimes simply by a lack of information.
Precisely. By re-examining these underutilized vegan resources with an open mind, while also prioritizing safety and education, we have the potential to really enrich our diets, maybe reconnect with some of our food traditions, and truly appreciate the vast diversity of the plant-based world.
It's about looking beyond what's familiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
And understanding the potential value that might lie in what we've previously overlooked or even avoided. Maybe that weed you're constantly battling in your garden isn't just a nuisance.
Right.
And that food with the unusual texture in the international aisle is worth a second thought.
This leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. What other assumptions do we hold about food, and what might we be missing out on by only sticking to the tried and true? Perhaps venturing into the realm of the taboo can lead to some surprisingly delicious and nutritious discoveries.
Food for thought indeed.
That brings us to the end of this deep dive into some fascinating and perhaps surprisingly nutritious vegan foods that might be considered a bit out of the ordinary.
We hope you found some of these insights intriguing, maybe even inspiring, to explore some new culinary territories. Remember, what's considered taboo or uncommon can often hold hidden value both culturally and for our well-being.
Thanks again to everyone for listening to the Rando Podcast.
If you enjoyed this discussion and want to hear more, please subscribe. We always appreciate you joining us.
Wishing you all the very best. Goodbye for now.
Peace.